The Mercedes W16 has finally broken cover, with studio shots having just been released by the team. And with it, we can get our first look at what is going to be an evolution of last year's W15 and not a revolution. Now, the primary goal of this W16 is to iron out two key flaws of last year's W15, most notably being its reluctance to turn in slow corners and the inconsistencies between tyre temperatures across all four wheels on the W15, which hampered both drivers across every session throughout 2024. But that doesn't mean there isn't wholesale changes, albeit evolutionary ones instead of revolutionary ones. So without further ado, let's jump right in and discuss all of the key changes that have happened from the front to the rear of this new W16. And to begin with, let's start off with the front wing. And this area has undergone quite a substantial change, with the nose now running all the way to the bottom of the front wing, no longer attaching itself as the first element of the front wing. And of course, that's meant an elongated nose, and they also have now included a vent on the nose just beneath the Mercedes logo. Basically a vent from which air will be going through it and probably more than likely up the nose and exiting, either with this being intentionally done for driver cooling or through the opening up on the top of the chassis. Something that they introduced at Austria last year with the W15 with a suspension change. The overall elements on this front wing as well as the end plate are very much alike to that of last year's W15, and that is something that will undoubtedly have changes made to when we come to Barcelona and the technical directive updated for the front wing flexing issue. And Mercedes should be one of the main teams that has a huge issue with it, since their front wing is very much one of the more flexible ones on the grid in the top four. A little bit further back, there's also a change on the front suspension, albeit not one from a push rod to pull rod design layout. They have stuck with the 2024 push rod. But what they have done is change the overall geometry of it and the angles of where all of the wishbones are coming from the wheel rim to the chassis of this W16. The angles are slightly different from that of last year's W15, as you can see from these comparisons on screen now. And of course, some of these will be about suspension kinematics, just the overall ride of the car itself over the bumps and curves, but also from an aerodynamic benefit or an aerodynamic change that they need to make sure they've utilized with all of the downstream changes. Now, of course, we now come to the major portion of where a lot of the changes have happened, both visibly as well as structurally from the internal layout, which we cannot see. And of course, we are talking about the Sidepod and the configuration that they have with this year's W16. It is very much a thing of Mercedes having taken a copy out of Red Bull's book last year with the overall inlet and Sidepod design. Very much a departure from what they were doing last season. As you can see with this image up on screen right now, you can see there is very much a big similarity between the inlet of the RB20 and this year's W16. And of course, they have now fully adopted, which they did last year, the overbite. But this is now has been designed with it focused and solely in mind with the overall design concept for this year, something it wasn't with last year's W15. The overall Sidepod underbite looks a lot more dramatic than that of last year, and it looks just a little bit more further refined and sculptured. So yeah, this should of course bring an increase in performance as well as overall downforce to the W16. Of course, staying with this particular portion of the car, we can see that the floor on this year's W16 is very much in tandem to the one that they ended last year with. They have kept the 6-proned element outer edge of the floor as well as the serrated edges just ahead of it, with the intricacies in between both of these particular areas. The sys pretty much looks exactly the same as it did last year, and the overall fences on this year's W16 look very similar to that of last season's. As for the halo, they do not have the Cobra ringlet which we have seen on multiple cars this year, instead electing for a winglet just on top or on the side of the halo itself, which of course is to make sure that the airflow is being directed and not distributed in areas from which they do not want it to be. Moving further back, the overall engine cover and just the shark fin are pretty much the standard from which they used last year with the W15. Whether that will change when we actually see the real car tomorrow, only time will tell, like we've seen on the Aston Martin. And just the overall air intake as well on the W16 has very much retained last year's overall design and shape. But what I can say as well about the Sidepods, they would have undoubtedly undertaken some further refinement in the overall structuring and layout of the internals in this area with all of the radiators. The packaging would have been a lot more tighter from what I can gathered here. And of course, we do not have a shot of the W16's diffuser, so there's a lot left to unravel with this Mercedes car. And so when we see the new car hit the track tomorrow for Bahrain in its shakedown, we may see a hugely different W16 than what we have seen just now. Anyway guys, I'm going to wrap up this video very quickly here. Hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, do of course leave a like on the video. Hit the subscribe button down below if you're new. And don't forget to turn on notifications for future content on the channel. And there will be a new Ferrari video for those of you interested in Ferrari a little bit later on today. Alright guys, I'll catch you all for some more videos tomorrow when I will reveal the overall W16 with its on-track debut, and of course pre-season testing starting Wednesday. Catch you all then.